your peace. If you're someone who goes quiet when you're hurt, you've probably been called cold, manipulative, or someone who gives the silent treatment. Maybe they've told you that you're emotionally immature, that you weaponize silence, that you're being difficult on purpose. And you've asked yourself, what if they're right? The reality that few understand is this. What happens inside you when the pain hits and the words simply vanish isn't coldness. It's not punishment. And it's definitely not manipulation. It's a signal. And psychology has a name for it. Think about the last time someone truly hurt you. It might have been a criticism that caught you off guard, a betrayal, a disappointment that came from where you least expected. And while the other person was talking, something happened. The words stopped coming. Your throat closed up. You just stared, physically present but verbally absent. And when you tried to explain what you were feeling, nothing came out. Or it came out wrong. So you withdrew, you retreated, you went silent. And then you became the villain of the story. Except the truth is much deeper. This isn't a character flaw. It's not immaturity. And it's not a choice, at least not in the way people think. It's a mechanism, documented, studied, with a name and address in neuroscience. And today, you're going to understand exactly what's happening, why it happens, and what this really says about who you are. In 1994, neuroscientist Dr. Stephen Porges developed the polyvagal theory, and it changed how we understand human responses to emotional stress. Porges identified that the nervous system has a very ancient response, older than language, older than conscious reasoning, that kicks in when the organism perceives too much threat to process any other way. He called it the dorsal vagal state. And when this state is activated, the body literally slows down, retracts, and access to speech becomes compromised. It's not drama. It's physiology. John Gottman, one of the most respected researchers on relationships, called this phenomenon physiological flooding. He discovered that when the heart rate exceeds about 100 beats per minute during an emotional conflict, verbal reasoning begins to measurably deteriorate. The person isn't ignoring what's being said. They literally temporarily lose access to the part of the brain responsible for producing language, Broca's area. Think about that for a second. The silence that people around you interpret as indifference, as punishment, as manipulation, is your nervous system responding to an overload. It's not a performance. It's an involuntary neurological blackout. This isn't weakness. This is your brain trying to survive what it's feeling. Which brings us to an essential question. If this is a documented mechanism, why do some people resort to it so often and others almost never? Because not everyone who goes silent when hurt is doing it for the same reason. This is where things take a turn. There are three groups, three distinct profiles of people who go silent when they're hurt. The same surface, completely different roots. Let's start with the group nobody talks about. The first are the flooded. These are the people who don't go quiet because they want to. These are the people who literally cannot speak. When the emotion hits too hard, the nervous system collapses before any word can be formulated. The heart rate spikes, the body goes into survival mode, and Broca's area, the brain region responsible for producing language, simply goes offline. It's like a circuit breaker tripping. Not because you're weak, but because the circuit was overloaded. For the flooded, silence isn't a tactic. It's a symptom. The pain hit too fast and too intensely for any verbal structure to handle it. You aren't being difficult. You are shut down. And when the other person interprets this as disregard, the gap between intention and perception becomes a chasm. The second group is the guardians. And this is perhaps the most common of the three. The guardians learned at some point in life that expressing pain was dangerous, that showing they were hurt resulted in something worse than the original pain. Rejection, contempt, punishment, or simply silence in return, which sometimes hurts more than any response. So silence became the only safe move available. For the guardians, the pain is real and intense, but showing it still feels, even today, like exposing an open wound on a battlefield. Silence is the armor. And even if the war is over, the bulletproof vest hasn't been taken off. Not because they don't feel, but because feeling out loud has cost too much before. The great silent danger is this: the armor isn't the problem. The problem is when you've forgotten it exists, when what started as protection became an identity. The third group is the processors. These are the people who don't go silent out of fear or overload. They go silent because they need time to translate what they're feeling into language. For them, raw emotion and words are different things. One doesn't automatically convert into the other. It takes time, stillness, an internal process that, when interrupted, produces confusion, not clarity. Talking before this process is complete doesn't help. It makes it worse. It's like trying to print a document while the computer is still compiling the file. The system crashes. For the processor, silence isn't the absence of feeling, it's the feeling being processed. And when the other person demands an immediate response, what comes out often doesn't represent what's actually happening inside. But before you identify which group you're in, there's a more important question. How did you get here? Let me paint a picture. Imagine a child. They are hurt by something. It could have been a fight with a friend, an injustice, any kind of disappointment. And they go to an adult with that emotion. And what they find isn't comfort. It's neglect, irritation, ridicule, or simply silence in return, without explanation, without acknowledgement, as if what they were feeling didn't deserve an answer. They learned something in that moment. They learned that their pain wasn't welcome, that showing emotion created problems, that it was safer to swallow it, disappear, stay quiet. John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, the researchers who mapped human attachment patterns, identified a specific style that emerges from this environment: avoidant attachment. It's the pattern that forms in early childhood, usually before the age of 5, when the child learns repeatedly that expressing emotional needs leads to rejection or punishment. To survive emotionally, they learn to deactivate their attachment system, to not ask, to not show they are hurt, to manage everything that hurts on their own. Studies estimate that approximately 25% of adults have this attachment style, 1 in 4. As psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk explains, the body keeps what the mind learns. These patterns don't just stay in conscious memory. They stay in the nervous system, in how the body responds to a raised tone of voice, a look of disappointment, a message left unanswered for hours. The child who learned to stay quiet to stay safe becomes the adult who stays quiet to protect themselves. Distancing isn't a conscious choice, but the result of a nervous system that updated its survival manual and never received the instruction to revise it. The reflection we rarely make is, what happened to you before you even knew what was happening? That taught your nervous system that staying silent was safer than speaking up. That's exactly what changes the game. Because there is a huge difference between silence as a shield and silence as a cage. And identifying which of the two describes your pattern is perhaps the most valuable thing you can do with everything you've learned here. Silence as a shield is adaptive. You pull back to process, to regulate yourself, to find the right words, and then you come back. Communication is postponed, not canceled. This silence serves the relationship. It protects you without destroying the other person. Silence as a cage is different. It's chronic. It's the silence that never resolves, that uses absence as a form of control, that closes the door and throws away the key. The withdrawal doesn't happen to process, but rather out of the terror of connection. Vulnerability sounds like a threat, not a bridge. Over time, this silence no longer protects. It isolates, and isolation becomes a prison. The question isn't whether you stay silent. The question is, does your silence eventually lead you back to connection, or does it push you further and further away from it? One is strength. The other is a sign that something needs attention. And the big turning point is this: even if your silence today functions more like a cage than a shield, that says nothing about who you are. It speaks to what you've learned, and what has been learned can, over time, be revised. So, what is your silence? A shield or a cage? Only you know the honest answer. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not cold. You're not manipulative. You are not emotionally immature. What you are is someone whose nervous system developed a protective response that makes perfect sense given what you've lived through, the environment that shaped you, and what was safe or dangerous in that context. Silence wasn't the wrong choice. It was the only one available. And now you have the words to decide what to do with it. If at any point in your life your silence was interpreted as indifference, when in reality you were trying to survive what you were feeling, leave a comment. It could be one word. I read them all. Because there are more people than you imagine who have gone through the same thing, who were called cold when they were overwhelmed, manipulative when they were protecting themselves, absent when they were processing in silence. You are not alone in this silence. If this video made sense to you, subscribe to the channel, because the next video is for anyone who also carries patterns that make sense on the inside and seem wrong on the outside. Protect your peace, but don't confuse peace with a prison.